Okay, so just real quick, I'm here with Yonatan from Quantum Machines. First question is, the obvious one. What is Quantum Machines? How do you guys set yourself different from, Zurich or Zurich Instruments or kickboards, things like that?
Okay, so at Quantum Machines, our core technology is about integrating quantum and classical computation, bringing that quantum classical integration to a completely new level. So in 2019, we introduced our first hybrid controller, which was, for the first time, we brought classical compute engines, completely general classical compute engines, into the heart of the quantum control system. And that meant that for the very first time you could program a whole quantum control program, but also include completely general classical computations inside your quantum control program and mix them with the past generation and the past sequencing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to skip forward a few questions because this one sounds interesting. So for example, let's say I'm doing like an Ising model or a Monte Carlo Markov chain. It sounds like kind of the same way that when I write a GPU CUDA code, some parts are CPU, some parts are GPU. It sounds like it'd be something like that. That's what I mean kind of by hybrid, where some parts would be QPU, I guess.
Yeah, so in our case, you have the controller, right? And it sends the quantum operations in the form of pulses to the qubits. So it's really the thing that generates the quantum operations, that performs the quantum operations. But we integrated on the same chip classical compute engines.
Yeah.
So yes, you could say, for example, I want to measure a qubit. I get the results, but that's a classical result now. It's 0 or 1. Maybe you measure 10 qubits, or it's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, right? That's a classical result now. And then you can process it on the classical compute engines. You can say, okay, I want to do some kind of processing to the results of the qubit measurements. And based on that, you decide, what do you do next? Do I want to play this pulse to the next qubit, or do I want to change the protocol or branch the protocol? All of that could be done from a single box. What we did later on, a couple of years ago, we extended that with the integration with NVIDIA, because we had to also now increase the classical compute power that we're integrated with. So now you have the classical compute power in the pulse processing unit, which is our hybrid controller, the core of our hybrid controller, and you have classical compute there, very close to the past generation. But if you want more processing power, you go to the GPU, okay? And that link is also very, very low latency. So you start having this hierarchy of classical compute engines, the closest you can to the qubits, then next, and the next, and so on.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can fix it in post. So another question, kind of related to the PPUs, the pulse processing units. So are they like how is that different than like a CPU or an FPGA or the other one escapes me, but you know what I mean? Like how, I guess what an ASIC, sorry, yeah. What is a PPU?
Yeah, so the PPU, so it's a processor, okay? When we say something is a processor, it means that it has a certain set of instructions that are performed by that processor, by the hardware, right? Just like a CPU has a set of instructions, a GPU, so does the pulse processing unit, the PPU. It has a set of instructions, and those instructions now are play this pulse to this qubit, play that pulse to this qubit, etc., etc. Okay, measure this qubit, do something with the result, take a decision on what pulse to play based on the result. These kind of instructions are what we call the instruction set of the pulse processing unit. That's what defines the pulse processing unit. We implement that actually on an FPGA today. So the pulse processing unit is implemented over an FPGA.
Yeah.
Later on, we would probably go ASIC. Okay, so we would create a pulse processing unit in silicon, which you can call an ASIC, right?
That makes sense. Yeah. That's cool. So back to kind of my experience with this kind of programming, like I was saying, when I had to use CUDA and GPUs and things like that, I had to be the brains, like the decision of what part of the code, because I can't run everything on the GPU. There's not enough memory and things like that. Some things go on the CPU. You have a type of software, QUA.
QUA, yeah.
Is that kind of what it does? It kind of helps you make decisions on what runs on which, or does it just kind of help you use the PPU?
No, QUA is what runs on the PPU.
Okay.
So now with the DGX Quantum, for example, you can write your QUA program and your CUDA kernel, and we have a way in the API to communicate between them
nice.
with very low latency. So you
Yeah.
write your the quad program would be basically what runs on the PPU, and again it includes the quantum commands at the pulse level, also some classical compute. But then you have the CUDA kernel, which will do the heavy processing, and then we have the communication between them. Okay?
That makes sense. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So a question I get a lot from like my friends in physics and quantum is like, let's say someone graduates with a bachelor's in physics or a master's in electrical engineering or a PhD maybe even. How do they get involved? Do you guys have like openings for different things?
Yes, we're hiring a lot these days.
And other things, what kind of skills would they need?
Yeah, so we are hiring a lot these days. We recently raised our C round, $170 million, which brought the total amount of investments in the company to over $250 million. So
Wow.
we're actually growing quite fast these days.
Yeah.
And hiring, and we're looking for people in all kinds of positions. Physicists, of course, typically at the PhD level or sometimes master's level, that do both product work, customer success work, or engineering works. And then, of course, we're hiring engineers, both software engineers, hardware engineers, FPGA engineers, hardware engineers, all kinds of positions. These are they're not so sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. And is this around the world? Is this Israel? Where is this?
We're hiring all over the world, actually.
Cool.
Yes, we're hiring all over the world.
Awesome. That's good to know. So last question. Where do you guys see yourselves in like 2 to 5 years? Like medium to long term?
Yeah, so we're the main challenge in the control system is to scale it up.
Yes.
Cost effectively. So there's a few parameters. You have to scale it up so the cost per qubit control goes down dramatically, because the roadmaps are to go to tens of thousands of qubits, hundreds of thousands of qubits, and eventually millions of qubits, let's say less than a decade from now. So it won't be viable if you don't reduce the cost per qubit control dramatically. That's one of actually the bottlenecks in scaling up a quantum computer.
Do you guys multiplex, or how do you?
Yeah, so for example, our control allows you to frequency multiplex dramatically.
Nice.
We're also thinking, some time division multiplexing in the future, etc.
Yeah.
But this also depends on how the QPU providers and how the full stack, companies decide to do their architecture.
Because you guys are qubit agnostic, right?
Yes, I would say we're working with all the qubits.
Okay,
we're not necessarily qubit agnostic. We have to do the hard work to support different types of qubits. Actually, the way I see quantum machines' role in the stack is to bring the QPU to a point where you can interface it in an agnostic manner, right? So, but at the pulse level, it really depends whether you connect to this kind of qubit or the other. But then after you do the calibrations, after you get your gates calibrated, then you can start thinking about the QPU in a more abstract manner as something that you interface and say it's agnostic to the qubit, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, yeah. So this has been Yonatan from Quantum Machines. Thank you for taking time to talk to us.
Thank you so much.